The time has arrived. Godzilla X Kong is currently in theaters. I saw it last night. Ugh. I loved it more than I thought I would. And we're going to do our review today. This is going to be a combo review. This is going to be part non-spoiler, part spoiler. So it's going to be a pretty long video, but most of it is going to be on the back end in terms of the spoilers. So don't worry. I will notify you when I get to the point that I'm going to dive into spoiler territory. But to get right into the review, this movie is just absolute fun. And I know that I sound like a broken record because that's what everyone's saying, but it couldn't be more true. Story-wise, I think, look, the story is very paper thin. It's very basic. It's very simple. I definitely feel like if you're a hardcore fan like myself and some others that have dove deeper into the lore, and when I say that, I mean like the literature, the novelizations, some of the comics, things like that, you'll understand and appreciate the story just a little bit more, because there are some things that are in this movie that were pulled from literature, which is not something that I was expecting and was very happy to see. Also, there are a lot of things in this movie that, once again, I think you have to be a fan to notice these things that are teased in this movie. It was actually very clever by Adam Wingard. One of the things I mentioned is that, you know, you hear a lot of times that sometimes movies go too hard on nostalgia, or they go too hard in serving the fans. And that can be true if done incorrectly, or that can be true, you know, to a point where sometimes it begins to feel like pandering. What I love about what Adam Wingard here did is he was very subtle about his fan service and his Easter eggs. They are all over the place, but they're not in your face. They don't ruin the experience. They don't mess up the flow of the movie, and I really appreciated that. Now, in terms of the movie, this is ultra fast paced. This is, in some degree, faster paced than Godzilla vs. Kong, and it is a slow start. You know, the first 20-25 minutes are kind of just using the humans to set up everything else, and then at that point, you're pretty much done with the human stuff. This is a movie that really does cater to the monsters, and it does a good job of building the monsters as characters in and of themselves. Yes, it is ridiculous at times. Yes, it is something that is an acquired taste. You know, you're gonna hear some fans that are more towards the -1 end of the Godzilla spectrum that are probably not gonna like this. But I think if you're a bit of a hybrid Godzilla fan like myself, who loves both the serious tone and the goofy tone, you're gonna be satisfied. I know I was. I didn't have super high expectations of the movie. I felt confident going in that I would enjoy it because it's Godzilla. I love Godzilla, but I didn't expect to enjoy it to this degree. Adam Wingard really went out of his way to just look at the 60s and the 70s Godzilla films and pretty much lean back and say, hold my beer. He really did try to outshow the Showa. Now, there are other elements in this movie that I feel are really, really hidden gems. Just moments of, I'm gonna say it outright, expertise. It's not something that lasts long, and it's not something that is front and center, but it is there, and I want to acknowledge that because, and it might be something that other people notice as well, and it might actually frustrate you because you see that there is a potential here to tell probably a very good story, but they decide to go the action route. And you want to know something? I understand that. Most general audiences are coming to see this movie because they know, hey, big monster, big monkey, you know, big lizard, big monkey punch. And general fans, they know who Godzilla is. They know who Kong is. The idea of seeing them on the screen together, the first thing they think about is monster fights. And who could blame them? That's what it's been. When you think about the exposure of Godzilla in the States, the great majority of that exposure is the Showa era. And the Showa era has the most cheesy, campy Godzilla stuff. This is not like an accident. This is intentional. And the movie knows that. The movie knows that, hey, when you were younger, you saw these goofy movies. Well, I'm going to give it to you now in HD. That's what this is. They're very much aware of that. I don't think they give a shit what critics say. You shouldn't give a shit what critics say, because you've come here to get exactly what you're looking for. Now, going back to the gems, there is a long, at least one, probably two, I gotta see the movie again, but there's at least a couple of moments in this movie where you exclusively get long sequences that are monster only. No humans, no dialogue. And I gotta give it to Adam Wingard for finding a way to communicate what these monsters are saying, how they feel, what they are implying by their actions, by their grunts, by their arm movements, or whatever. It is really good. It is really good. It makes me think about what Max Borenstein said about the idea of doing a monster movie with absolutely no humans. I still think that's a tall task, and I'm not sure it would work, but in small doses, it's very effective, and I gotta say, it's something else. Because and it is more geared towards the apes than it is obviously Godzilla, but even Godzilla has at least one moment where, with all the limitations of the expressions on his face, you get the idea of what he's saying, what he's reacting to. So I just want to say that that's something I think is going to be a little underappreciated. I've heard a couple of people mention it, so it's nice to know that people are at least recognizing that. But I think for the most part, you could tell this movie there's certain parts of this movie that have completely gone over the head of critics. I saw somebody give the movie a 1 star, and one of the things they mentioned was Rebecca Hall's haircut. Reviews like that, do you even count that as a review, whether it's positive or negative? When you say something like that, it's like, okay, we know you're just writing it to get a reaction out of what you're saying. Whether the reaction's good or bad, obviously it gives attention to you. Those are the kind of reviews you're getting right now, and I would say completely ignore critics. I mean, we all know that by now, but now more than ever, this is the worst time in any movie to pay attention to the critics. Pay attention to what the audience is saying, and right now, for the most part, the audience is highly satisfied. We just got news that Godzilla X Kong has come out to become the largest opening movie in the franchise on a Thursday. That's telling, considering that up to this point, every movie has had diminishing returns. So, but what you're gonna get in this movie is there are certain parts of the movie where the story is quite competent and heartfelt. And it is unfortunate that those are few and far between, but what I would highlight is that Rebecca Hall and Jaya or Katie Hoddle, their little interactions are very heartfelt, good acting there, but again, it's very small and it's not much, and they don't really leverage that. They made a commitment to go with the monsters. I do think it's the right decision on a whole, because that's what's going to bring in the money. And unlike Marvel and some of these other, this franchise needs the money, because that's the only way you get another movie. They're not billion-dollar blockbusters. If this movie cracks 500, 600 million, that's an accomplishment, because even with all this exposure, even with all the hype, the kaiju genre is a very, very small genre with a fan base that is much smaller to the likes of Marvel, DC, Star Wars. So every dollar counts. So they have to go with what they know is going to make it move. So I do like the little story element. There are tons of Easter eggs, and I'm going to get into that shortly in spoilers. But what I would say about this movie is it is a lot of fun. There are small moments of gleam. There are moments that are also extraordinarily bad. And I am as much as I love the movie, you guys know I'm fair, I'm objective. Look, for Godzilla -1, I shitted on part of the movie towards the end where the boats like literally teleported to each other. Well, you have another moment like that here in Godzilla X Kong, and it just was it was bad. It was bad. I'm there like, okay, all right, this is like, okay. So I'm not gonna go because I love -1, but I'm not going to criticize that and then come over here and not criticize them when they did something very similar, only it wasn't regarding boats. And I'll get into later in the spoilers what it's regarding. So yeah, it's not perfect. And there's something else they did in the movie that I really did not like. Again, it's a big spoiler moment. I don't want to do it here for those who want to avoid spoilers. I'll talk about it shortly when I move over into the spoiler territory. But overall, it is a lot of fun. There's a lot of action. You're gonna see these monsters doing things you've never seen before. You do lose the scale aspect of these monsters, but that's because you're fighting on their territory. And one thing I want to reiterate, because I don't think everybody heard this, I know a lot of fans did, but if a general audience person kind of stumbles upon this, one of the things Adam Wingard said in regards to the monsters moving fast and doing the things they're doing, the reason it's shown on screen the way it is because everything in this movie, when you're in the monster moments, everything you're seeing is from a monster's perspective. So as a human, when you see Godzilla trying to run or do this, it looks very methodical, it looks very slow. But when you're a monster seeing these monsters do that, the speed normalizes for them because that's from their perspective. I was very happy that I got to hear him say that before the movie because it does help. It does help with the immersion a little bit, knowing that, okay, I'm not watching this from a perspective of a human. I'm watching this from a perspective of another monster. And because of that, there's no sense in him looking slow and methodical. That helps a lot. At least for me, it did. I don't think it's going to matter to most people. It seems like people are just having a ball with this movie. And I think the reason for that is because the movie knows what it is. It knows what you want. It's going to give you what you want. It's not trying to win an Oscar. It's not trying to please critics. It's trying to please the customers who are paying to go see this movie. And that is actually something that's lacking in Hollywood. And I think that's why this movie has such more positive responses than I think people expect, because they know their customer. They're giving you what you're paying for, which is more than I can say for most movies in the last several years. And because of that, I really highly recommend the movie. Go with your family. My kids loved it. My daughter cried. It's like, because there are some emotional moments in there. I'm not saying like adults would, but you would appreciate it. You look at me like, oh, when it's to a 12-year-old little girl, it's like, it's a big deal. So everybody in the theater had a ball. My theater was surprisingly packed. It didn't seem that way from the beginning, but overall, it's a fun movie. I had a great time. I think there's little gems in there that you can appreciate. If you're a hardcore fan and you've been following the Monsterverse like I have for the past going on 11 years, you're going to see all the little subtle Easter eggs. You're going to see all the little subtle potential teases. And you're going to see a lot of things in the background that you need to pay attention to. I wasn't jesting and I wasn't joking when I said on Twitter last night and I said on the live stream last night that I literally think they low-key set up like the Titan Avengers, because I really do think they did. Whether it was intentional or not, whether that's planned or not, which I wouldn't be surprised if it is, by the time the movie ends and there's no end credit scene, so go ahead and use the bathroom after the movie's over, but by the end of the movie, you kind of look back and you realize, wait a minute, it's not just Godzilla and Kong. So that's all I'll say. And with that, I'm going to segue into spoilers. So I'm going to take a little intermission. I'm going to insert it here for like 5 seconds, give you guys time to think about whether or not you want to stay, and then we're going to transition. All right, welcome back. I'm giving you an additional 3 seconds to get the fuck out. 3, 2, 1. All right. I don't know exactly where to start with spoilers, so I'm just gonna go all out. First of all, what do I mean by makes you feel like they low-key set up the Avengers? Well, by the time the movie is over, you went from Godzilla and Kong teaming up to Godzilla, Kong, Shimo. Yes, Shimo turns to be a good guy at the end of the movie, and Suko. I almost fucked that up twice. and Mothra. All right. And for those of you who are watching spoilers that haven't seen the movie or have no clue, yes, Mothra is in the movie. She's very impactful and she lives. That to me is like the most telling thing. The other telling thing is that Mothra was added to this movie like kind of sort of last minute. It wasn't originally supposed to be her, which tells me more that they are potentially planning for something that's going to involve her. There are 5 big time monsters at the end of this movie that make it very clear that even Shimo turning good and then being kept alive, because my understanding would be that if Shimo did turn or turn on Scar King, it wouldn't mean that she would be turning good. It would essentially mean that she's going to lose control and try and kill everybody. I thought it was going to be something where she kills Scar King and then she looks to Kong and Godzilla and unleashes her new power and they have to team up to kill her. No, she joins the squad, and Shimo is powerful, but she comes across as very reserved. Like, you know, she has that power, but she's kind of lost. This is something that you can kind of see throughout the movie. As Scar King is controlling her, you can see like she's been trapped and subjugated by this monster for millions of years. And now we understand why Scar King's eyes are the way they are. He's not only an alpha, but also they've been trapped under there for millions of years. Godzilla was the one who trapped them there originally. There are references or straight up call outs in this movie to the Godzilla vs. Kong novelization. It's really impressive how much they actually did pull from some of the literature, not directly, very loosely and very spread out, but it's there. So yeah, I do think I did get the feeling that these are like your core 5 now. That's not, and I don't know, and again, I'm not sure if that's intent or not, but I do feel confident saying that now because I'm not the only one who said it. A bunch of people I spoke to last night agree. The ending is very much, if you ever saw the first Avengers at the ending of the movie when like Cap's riding on the bike and Thor's taking Loki back to Asgard and Tony Stark is like shaking the hand and going over his blueprints with Pepper. Like, they show each individual hero and they kind of go off in their own separate direction. But it's very similar here. Mothra just flies off. Godzilla goes back to Rome and goes back to sleep in the Colosseum. And Shimo, again, I almost did it again. Anyway, yeah, they go back to the Hollow Earth and they're together. But it's like now Kong is riding Shimo and kind of pets her and kind of gives her a little hug, and she's all peaceful. It's again, not saying it's intent and not saying that is even what they're remotely trying to do, but the feeling that gives is kind of what I'm expressing there. And you might say, well, Rob, what makes you think they would even do an Avengers type Titan movie? Well, there's one big threat outside of what we've all talked about, which is Destroyer. There's one other big threat that would probably require 5 monsters like these 5 to defend the Earth against. That would be aliens. Oh, why would I mention aliens? Well, they showed Planet X on Bernie's computer. Bernie mentioned aliens like several times, including when he looked at the temple before they entered the Mothra temple on the Hollow Earth. He was filming it. He said, look at this, ancient aliens. And what happens when you go into the temple? Suddenly you have this highly intelligent, telepathically communicating with each other. They don't speak. They communicate telepathically, and they can control gravity. Now, how would they possibly learn that if they are indeed humanoids? And then you go back to what he said about ancient aliens. What I'm saying is the breadcrumbs and the seeds have been planted. It doesn't mean that's how it's going to play out. And I can see a world where Adam Wingard gets the green light and he says, you know what? This might be the last one. Let's go all out. And what would they have to lose? If they have no plans to make another movie after another one, why not go all out? And I'm the person who years ago said, yeah, no, let's not. But you want to know something? After seeing this movie, I was wrong about everything I said. No problem. I'll eat crow. They made Mechagodzilla work, even though it was 2 minutes long. It doesn't matter. It worked. Now they've gone off the deep end and it worked. So go for it. You want Destroyer? You'll get Destroyer. Maybe you'll get Destroyer and Aliens. Whatever they decide to do. And and if you think that there won't be another movie, not only is the movie tracking to make a lot of money this weekend, but everybody's favorite informative resource on Twitter last night said that there is going to be a pitch meeting in April that was posted on Twitter by KDM. Interesting. I'll actually put up the little image which I want to thank James Sidoti for that. He provided me that information while I was streaming last night. So I think there's a lot. I think they felt pretty confident about this movie going in. Remember, these guys do market research. They track these things. So they know, they have a pretty good idea ahead of time of how these movies are going to perform. And I think they had a pretty strong feeling this one was going to perform well, and they seem to be right. This movie beat Godzilla 2014 in Thursday night previews by about $800,000 from 9.3 million, I think it was, or 9.4 to a little over 10 million now. And right now, the projection for the weekend has skyrocketed from 60 million to 68 to 74 million. This is good. So if we are going to get a sequel, which looks pretty promising by now, and they set up you know what? Let me continue with the sport. There's so much to talk about. That's why these next 2 days with the streams are going to be huge. There is a scene where one of these characters, he's not a main character, he's a support character. They're traveling through the new region of the Hollow Earth, and he's arguing with, Trapper, he's arguing with Bernie, he's arguing about being safe and this and that, and they got to listen to him. And then suddenly this plant out of nowhere snatches him up and eats him. And the first thing I thought about was, wow, well, I thought to myself, is that Adam just kind of messing with people and putting this in there? Because I think the first reaction I had was, wow, like the whole Biollante thing. Not that she wasn't plant, like a man-eating plant, but just the idea that the one thing that actually killed a human of all the things in the Hollow Earth was a plant, and a pretty cool plant, or a tree rather. It was either way. And I said to myself, okay, it might just be coincidence, but I wasn't the only one to think that. And again, I'm not saying this is going to lead to anything. I'm not saying it was even intentional, but it is quite on the nose. And Adam Wingard has been known to watch YouTube videos and even troll Reddit. So I think if it was intentional, he probably just did that as a nod and wink to the fans. That's how I took it. Again, it doesn't mean that Biolante's on the way and any of that. However, one thing I will mention is that they made it their business to mention that less than 5% of the Hollow Earth has been charted, which again leads you to believe that there is a massive land out there that could be hiding how many ever monsters. So again, I think what they need to do is let go of the ancient rivalry thing. That is been done way too much. It started with the Muto, it continued with Kong, and now continue with Scar King and Shimo. I think it's time to leave that alone. I really do think, I never thought I'd say this, I really do think the aliens might be the next play. They've been setting up aliens since Godzilla vs. Kong. I thought of it as just a nice little breadcrumb Easter egg in Godzilla vs. Kong. But now that they've gone to the well again, and they've made it their business to be a little bit more intentional this time in terms of mentioning it, I do think that that's in play. I also think the key to this is Adam Wingard. If Adam Wingard gets a nod to direct another movie, I do think he's gonna go crazy. If we get another director, that's when things change. So I'm very much behind Adam Wingard directing another movie. I want to continue to see what his ideas are. I know there's some people, Adam Wingard's a big Hedorah fan. I know there's some people who think that Hedorah could be reconstructed into an alien. And I think that's possible. I think this all depends on how much money they want to spend to go with Toho monsters. I think when you consider that you have a mix of original creations and two of Toho's biggest monsters in Godzilla and Mothra. And the fact that this movie only cost 135 million, I know a lot of people are surprised by that. Just go watch my last video where I explain how assets work and creating assets and how you can recycle them and it saves money. If they decide to go and explode the budget to get more Toho monsters, then yeah, I could see that as a potential, especially if it really is his favorite monster. After all, Michael Dougherty did that with Rodan, who was his favorite monster, gave him one of the best scenes in the Monsterverse. But I do think that with all that, I do think they want to keep costs as low as possible. And the idea of going to Toho to pull over a monster like Hedorah, even if I could see him transforming and making his own Hedorah without any copyright infringement, but I don't know if paying for another monster from the Toho gallery and ballooning your budget, because remember, first you got to pay for the right to use it, then you got to bring it in, you got to hire concept artists to all give their own interpretation of what it looks like, then you pick it, then you got to build it from the, I mean, this shit costs money. It's going to be a lot of money to bring in another Toho monster, and if you're going to spend the money to do that, you're going to want to bring in something that's going to be more impactful than a Hedorah, in my opinion. So I still am of the belief that if they bring over another Toho monster, it's going to be Destroyer. And I am still of the belief that if they decide to bring over two, then I do think Hedorah and Biollante are probably the top choices. However, considering Mothra's back, which by the way, I didn't like how they handled her. That's one of the things I mentioned earlier in the video about something I really didn't like. I like her in and of herself. She was great, but I don't like the fact that they made Jaya go from the Kong Whisperer all the way to now a solo Mothra twin that rose up to a large piece of what looks like Final Fantasy materia and essentially summons Mothra. There's no egg, there's none of that. She literally just looks up, goes like this, and these little particles come together and Mothra forms. And I was like, okay. But Mothra in and of herself was badass, and the fact that she lived to me is quite telling. So I didn't like that. And the other thing I was talking about that I didn't like was how they got the glove for Kong. I mean, that was it was stupid. It was like it just popped up out of it. It's this exact same thing that I didn't like about what they did at the end of -1 when all the boats just suddenly teleported together out of nowhere. Same thing here. So like I said, every movie has its criticism, and I'm going to be fair to both. I love both movies, obviously for different reasons, but neither one of them are perfect. So yeah, man, I mean, I can just keep going, and this video is already 28 minutes long, but what I will say is this. We're gonna talk more spoilers definitely on Saturday. I know I've been getting a lot of messages this morning. Some people like, hey, I'm gonna watch the movie tomorrow, when are you doing the spoiler talk? But then I had people last night that have seen the movie like, oh, we're gonna do spoilers tomorrow. So I'm still undecided, you know what I mean? I think it doesn't matter. I'm gonna be streaming both nights regardless. The reason I was planning on holding off until spoilers on Saturday is because by then I think everybody would have seen it. But we'll see how things play out. Let's see how big the crowd is, how demanding people are for spoilers tonight on the stream. We will be starting the latest 8 o'clock. I'll try to put a schedule up no later than 4, so you know what time ahead of time. But usually I never start before 6 p.m. and I never start later than 8 p.m. So, and I usually go for 2 hours. Something tells me we're gonna be going longer, and that's fine. But it's gonna be a lot of fun. And then tomorrow will be the Godzilla themed feast that I will be cooking and eating on stream, so you guys can see me enjoy some brisket, some rice, some cabbage, and all this other stuff that you guys voted for. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But look, overall, look, man, it's just a good movie. It's just a lot of fun. I had a blast. I can't wait to see it again. And I can't wait to see if any of these things that he teased, or again, I don't even know if it's intentional. It probably isn't, but it doesn't make it any less fun. As you can see, my mind is everywhere. I'm a very imaginative person. I love storytelling. So like, I have so many different directions that I can go with based on what I saw, that It's just, it's crazy. But anyway, that's it. This is a 30-minute video. That's long enough. So you got your spoiler-free review, and then you got a little bit of the spoilers. I don't want to make this video any longer. I'm going to see you guys tonight. I'm going to see you Saturday night. We're good to go. So we'll talk more when I see you guys later. But until then, this is Rob signing out for E.T.N, where we don't do news, we just talk entertainment, and I'm so happy to be talking about Godzilla X Kong. I'll see you guys tonight on the stream. Take it easy.